Russia marks the 80th anniversary of Victory Day with a military parade in Red Square in Moscow to mark the 80th anniversary of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany during World War II. Alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin, it is anticipated that the leaders of China, Kazakhstan, Laos, Guinea-Bissau, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Belarus, Turkmenistan and Cuba will attend. As you can see, the live visuals now we are currently showing you. President Putin is expected to address the crowd later in the day at 7 o'clock GMT. At the parade, to give you more updates on this and more information, which you are currently tuning into, there you see the Chinese president, the guest of honor, Xi Jinping, alongside Vladimir Putin, the Russian president. Moscow is currently hosting 29 foreign heads of state, including, as I previously mentioned, China's Xi Jinping, along with Brazil's Lula da Silva, Europe obviously being mostly absent due to the backdrop of the ongoing war in Ukraine and also conflict in the country's west. As you can see now, marching processions through the streets of Russia's Red Square, the center of the Russian capital, Moscow, just in the background of the Kremlin. The scale, in terms of scale of this event, it's a very grand occasion in the Russian capital. Around 9,000 troops gather to march and take part in the parade. 75 ground weapons will be shown and paraded through the streets of the Red Square. As you can see there, Moscow's grand Orthodox architecture in the Red Square, the center of Russian power. There you can see the famous, iconic St. Basil's Cathedral, very iconic in Russian architecture, and in many ways the building that most people think of when they think of the Russian capital. Putin previously finished an 11-minute address calling today a turning point for civilization, flanked by Xi Jinping and 27 other heads of state. The ground column, as you can see, 9,000 troops and 75 vehicles rolled as planned, while a trimmed 12-jet flypast squeaked through patchy cloud at around 11:25 a.m. A Chinese PLA honor guard marched for the first time since 2015 in the Russian capital. Security has maintained tense during the event. This obviously happens during a self-imposed ceasefire. There you can see the visuals of the 9,000 troops in attendance, the 9,000 Russian troops. This falls on the backdrop of a self-imposed ceasefire by the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, in the background of this, the ongoing conflict. Kiev has not agreed to the ceasefire and has logged the total so far at 734 Russian ceasefire violations in the first 12 hours of the self-declared truce, and Zelensky has labeled it a parade farce. The ceremony as it goes, the speech themes, which Putin mentioned, he invoked the USSR's 27 million wartime dead. Russia lost the most troops in the Second World War out of any country by far, 27 million dead, which would have been wrapped up 80 years ago today. They warned of forces of rewriting history and equated today's conflict with the Soviet fight against Nazism, but avoided direct nuclear threats in his speech. There's been many diplomatic sidelines to this event. We've had a Xi-Putin joint statement where the leaders pledged to oppose unilateral sanctions, and they've blasted in NATO encroachment in the Asia-Pacific, a region they both share and both hold an alliance. Putin accepted an invitation to a China V-Day commemoration in the month of September this year. You also have BRIC top six in play here, where President of Brazil, Lula da Silva, President of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and Myanmar's military junta leader, Ming Yang, who joined together for a brief photograph on the Red Square, with EU and G7 leaders absent. Serbia's leader, however, has come to the parade despite regional pressure, one of the only two leaders from Europe, the others being Slovakia's Fico, who made a late morning appearance after earlier illness rumours. As you can say, during the grand ceremony, there is a current backdrop of conflict. Obviously, Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine, where there have been over 100,000 people killed so far. These 29 leaders have taken this ceremonial event as a stance towards the West and towards the European Union, and showed condonance with Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine, which the Russians obviously call the special military operation.
Здравствуйте, товарищи! Поздравляю вас с 80-й годовщиной победы в Великой Отечественной войне!
See the Russian defense minister currently addressing his troops. Andrei Belousov, the 9,000 troops in attendance standing in uniform line, showing Russia's military strength, obviously, and with the backdrop of the current war going on, both in their country and in Ukraine's. If you're just joining us and viewing, this is the Red Square in Moscow, where Russia are hosting 29 foreign heads of state who align with them despite Western sanctions and international condemnation from other countries. These 29 leaders have specifically joined Vladimir Putin at this very special day, accepted his invitation. There you see President Xi Jinping with Vladimir Putin. He has been invited as the guest of honor. This ceremony celebrates Victory Day, otherwise known as VE Day, which marks the end of the Second World War, where the Allies accepted the surrender of Nazi Germany back in 1945.
Товарищ Верховный Главнокомандующий Вооруженными силами Российской Федерации, войска Московского гарнизона к параду в ознаменовании 80-й годовщины Победы в Великой Отечественной войне готовы. Министр обороны Российской Федерации Белоусов.
Where are you finding this?
Дорогие граждане России, дорогие ветераны, уважаемые гости, товарищи солдаты и матросы, сержанты и старшины, мичманы и прапорщики, товарищи офицеры, генералы и адмиралы. Поздравляю вас с 80-летием Победы в Великой Отечественной войне. Сегодня всех нас объединяют чувства радости и скорби, гордости и благодарности, преклонения перед поколением, которое сокрушило нацизм.
Russian President Vladimir Putin address 9,000 troops as well as an audience, as well as 29 foreign leaders led by China's President Xi Jinping, among many others, including Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro, along with Brazilian President Lula da Silva, all of who have accepted invitations to this ceremony, despite Western condemnation for Vladimir Putin's Russia in Ukraine, despite economic sanctions. These 29 heads of state attend and show that they do in fact still support the Kremlin in their war efforts against Ukraine. This is a monumental ceremony. It marks the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, otherwise known as. In order to mark this, Vladimir Putin declared a 72-hour truce in his ongoing war. The man you see speaking, who declared a war on Ukraine. He invaded Ukraine in the month of February of 2022. And so we are now, as the war in Ukraine enters its fourth year. In his address, Putin is expected to frame the parade as proof that Russia remains unafraid despite the war. Western leaders' absence will be portrayed as irrelevant, while the presence of BRICS partners is touted as diplomatic vindication. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was previously expected to be in attendance. However, since Operation Sindoor, he then cancelled his trip to Moscow and attended matters at home.
только победу. Дорогие друзья.
Here, Putin is speaking currently about the 27 million wartime dead that Russia suffered during the Second World War. He warns of forces rewriting history and equated today's conflict with the Soviet fight against nationalism. Nazism, apologies, Nazism, not nationalism, but he previously avoided nuclear threats. The Soviet Union, obviously, previously, we've seen symbolism, that hammer and sickle, that iconic old flag of the Soviet Union, who held most of Eastern Europe post-World War II. Putin is a known admirer of the previous efforts of formerly the Soviet Union and now Russia. He sees it as a great tragedy that Alexander Khrushchev gave up and disbanded the Soviet Union in the 1990s. Many people think that this is what he wants to recreate with his war in Ukraine. He wants to gain that territory back.
Героизм народа был массовым. Все республики несли общую тяжелую ношу войны. Огромным был вклад жителей Средней Азии и Закавказья. Отсюда бесперебойно шли эшелоны со всем, в чем нуждался фронт. Здесь размещались госпитали и нашли свой второй дом сотни тысяч эвакуированных людей. С ними делились кровом, хлебом, сердечным теплом. Мы чтим каждого ветерана Великой.
I want to just give you a list of the 29 heads of state that are currently in attendance and align with Russia in their war in Ukraine, seemingly. We have the major partners, which include guest of honor, Chinese President Xi Jinping. Brazil's President Lula da Silva is in attendance. European presence, the continent which they are currently in. The only two from the continent, that being the Serbian head of state, President Alexander Vučić, and Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, who arrived after airspace detours. You also have post-Soviet and Eurasian allies. Some of these nations used to be part of the Soviet Union, which Putin admires so greatly. You have Armenian heads of state, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, Belarus, who is there, Alexander Lukashenko, President Alexander Lukashenko, one of the longest reigning leaders in the world today. You have Kazakhstan's premier, Kyrgyzstan's premier, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan's leader, President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. You also have some allies from South and East Asia too. You have Prime Minister Min Aung from Myanmar, the junta leader, who took control of the country of Myanmar in 2021 with his military coup. He is there when his country still reels from the aftermath of the earthquake that happened just a few weeks ago. You also have Vietnam, who's making a presence. The party General Secretary to the LAM is there, and also the Mongolian president.
Высоко ценим вклад в нашу общую борьбу солдат союзнических армий, участников сопротивления, мужественного народа Китая, всех, кто сражался во имя мирного будущего. Дорогие друзья, мы будем и впредь держать равнение на ветеранов, на их искреннюю любовь к Родине, на их решимость защищать отчий дом ценности гуманизма и справедливости. Придадим этим традициям, этому великому наследию самое главное в нашем сердце и передадим это будущим поколениям. Всегда будем опираться на наше единство в ратных и мирных делах, в достижении стратегических целей, в решении задач во имя России, ее величия и процветания. Слава народу-победителю! С праздником! С Днем Великой Победы! Ура!
Concludes the president's speech. The ceremonial traditions continue, firing of artillery, the showcase of weapons as Russia's grand ceremony continues. President Vladimir Putin speak. He spoke about saying that it is Russia's duty to defend its dignity of the soldiers of the Russian army. The Kremlin leader says Russian society is supporting the participants of the special military operation, which is what the Russians label their ongoing war in Ukraine. He also says truth and justice are on our side. Putin then spoke about the Second World War and says that almost 80% of the population was involved in the war and defeated the Nazis. Putin, of course, the Soviet Union formerly allied against Germany with the countries like the British, like France, much not the case today. It is with the only two representatives from Europe there present, that being Serbia and Slovakia. Along with them involved is Chinese President Xi Jinping, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, and Brazilian Premier Lula da Silva. Putin is now paying tribute to the veterans who fought during the Second World War. He says, "We will look upon our veterans who displayed true love for the motherland, who decided to defend their home," he says. "We will always have this in our heart, and we will keep it for our future generations, and we will display our unity in military and civil affairs in achieving goals for Russia and the welfare of Russia." He finished his speech saying, "Glory to the people who won the war." There you can see Chinese President Xi Jinping there, sat in the audience, along with many other heads of state. As we've said previously, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was meant to be in attendance at this parade. He had to pull out due to the obvious ongoing Operation Sindoor. Now let's take a look a bit more at the celebrations. Putin just spoke of the Russian veterans who died during World War II, with most of them being ethnic Russians. Russia had the highest number of deaths during the Second World War. I just want to give you a breakdown of these numbers. They are quite significant. Military deaths from the conflict was around 8.7 to 11 million Soviet soldiers that died, including those killed in action, either missing or in captivity. The civilian deaths in Russia are between 15 and 18 million. A significant amount of people who Russia lost. Civilians perished due to massacres, bombings, starvation, disease and other war-related causes. It remains one of the highest death tolls in any conflict in human history. This is who Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, was just paying homage to in his speech. 80 years ago today, victory over Nazi Germany was declared by the Allied forces, which included that of the Soviet Union, France, Britain, and many other countries. I want to delve into a bit more into Putin's speech, as we did not have the translation coming out live. He spoke of the 27 million Soviet war dead and called them immortals, something that we've previously mentioned. And he also, of course, references to the Ukrainians as a Nazi force, calling them the new Nazism. And he claimed that Russia is fighting against them and international terrorism to protect Donbass, and justifies the invasion as a moral sequel to 1941 to 1945. He also says that the Western nations have unleashed a war on Russia, and he described a war unleashed against our quote-unquote motherland and a turning point for civilization. And he recasted Moscow as the victim and not the aggressor. He then went on to attack Western exceptionalism and accuse Western elites of erasing history, imposing rules, and destroying family values. He frames the conflict as cultural as well as military. He then came in with some praise for BRICS nations and the global south, where he lauded foreign guests and a multipolar world, of fair opportunity, and he signalled diplomatic backing despite Western boycotts. When he's talking about this, he's obviously talking about the sanctions put on Russia by the West after the invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. He then led a moment of silence and hailed soldiers in Ukraine as worthy heirs of 1945. This blends reverence with rallying round the flag rhetoric. Some notable sound bites for you here. We will remember those who fell and became immortals, Putin said when talking about the 27 million Russians killed in the Second World War. He says a war has once again been unleashed against our motherland, but we are fighting back, when referencing about the current conflict going on in Ukraine. He as well said that Western elites preach exceptionalism and erase the memory of Nazism. He said a fair multipolar world is emerging before our eyes. There are some of the statements from Putin's speech there as we watch the celebrations post the ceremony. We are now joined by Dr. Sergei Dvoryanov, President of the IDC, Russia, and Director of WHD International Board, located in Moscow, where this event is happening today. Dr. Dvoryanov, how significant is a day of a day is this? What's the feeling in the Russian capital today?
Thank you so much. Yes, it's a beautiful day today indeed, and we can see that that is a very unique opportunity of all our nation, but not only Russian nation, but all global society, again touched to the historical truths, like our honorable guest, Xi Jinping, the leader of China. He came and they had a very good conversation, friendly conversation with our national leader, Vladimir Putin. And in his speech, Mr. Xi Jinping, he mentions that always follow to historical truths. That is a role of Russian Federation, of our civilization. And of course, everybody happy because right now we can see during this big conflict of civilization, Russia again and again try our level best, our country try to make the historical truth is a basic principle in relationships between two countries. Right? For example, we want to rejoin a Russian-speaking population of Ukraine back to Russia because before it was a part of Russian empire, it was a part of a Russian civilization. That is historical truth. That's why this, of course, this holiday, this national big celebration, again, is an opportunity for all of us to touch to the spirit of history. And look, for example, even Donald Trump, he announced that 8th of May will be Victory Day for America, and America did some main role in the second war. But everybody knows that Donald Trump cannot show the picture with Reichstag, with the American flag. Everybody knows that Reichstag was with a Soviet Union flag. And Berlin indeed was like a last aim of the war, and of course this day is very significant for all humanity. For my opinion, it's significant for all humanity.
Dr. Dvoryanov, obviously 80 years ago today marks VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. Back then, the Soviet Union, now Russia of course, and the West, including Britain and France, were allies. How does the Russian state, country, population feel now about the fact that the only two European leaders that are present are Slovakia and other Eastern European bloc?
Yes. Yes, we can see that after Second War, it was agreement which was done, and in Yalta were three leaders. Actually, that was three leaders of three great countries like Soviet Union, America, and United Kingdom. Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin. They was in Yalta, in Crimea, and it was an agreement about how it will be model of post-war world. And according to this agreement, of course, it was NATO and eastern part of Europe, Warsaw bloc, like a union of all Soviet and socialist republics, socialist countries. After the destruction of USSR, everything changed in Europe. And right now, the new process of, we can tell, some revenge moods in some the heads of the European politicians start. First of all, example of Ukraine, we can see that fascism was reborn again in Europe, which is a big challenger for humanity. But slowly we can see, even with the role of Donald Trump, we understand right now that we have new conditions to prepare new global agreement. That's why I'm a big optimist, and I can see right now during the visit of a lot of presidents, head of states to Moscow, that everybody understands historical truths, and in future, of course, we can expect peace in Ukraine. We can expect a peace between Russia and Ukraine, and we can expect some new global agreement like Yalta II. We can see that repeat of agreement between main countries in this new historical situation.
Dr. Dvoryanov, what indication do you have that signals an agreement like this? I mean, looking from the outside, it seems like Russia and Ukraine could it be no nearer to finding a peace deal. Kiev has had alleged over 700 violations of the ceasefire in the first 24 hours. Why should international audiences treat this ceasefire as credible?
Yes, we can see that even inside Ukraine, a lot of challenges for the Mr. Zelensky. First of all, he should be re-elected. Everybody understands it. He is not legally not allowed to be a leader of country, and it's a question of legacy of the future. It's a question of trust. I can expect. It's a lot of, you can see movement inside Europe. Look to the election in Romania. Look to the election in Great Britain. New politicians, which is start there, we can tell that right national activity inside the European countries. They understand the role of our national leader, Vladimir Putin. And they describe with a new vision how we can negotiate peace with Russia. And of course, that is a question of time only. Right now, to Mr. Zelensky is only one chance to be in power, that is increase violation, increase aggressive action against Russia. But that strategy is not useful at all. The strategy very weak. And of course, that only question of time. I completely believe that it will be peace between our countries on the conditions, very acceptable conditions of Russian Federation, that Russian-speaking population should be joined to us. All regions which already choose to be with Russia will be part of Russian Federation. We should completely delete and remove this Nazi, this fascism movement inside Ukraine. Ukraine should be not part of NATO.
Okay.
It should be neutral state country. That is a very simple conditions.
I just want to say, put some information there that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has not scheduled presidential elections, originally due in March of 2024, primarily due to martial law, which has been in effect since February of 2022, because under Ukraine's constitution, no elections can be held during this period of martial law, hence why Ukraine has not held any elections. However, I want to go back to Vladimir Putin's speech where he spoke of Western attempts to rewrite history. Can you point to concrete examples of this, or what Vladimir Putin is trying to indicate by this, and what does Moscow find the most troubling?
Yes, look, for example, very frankly speaking, we understand, all of us understand that even that decision of Donald Trump to announce 8th of May be a victory day for America in the second World War is not historically reasonable. Because, for example, Donald Trump forgot about Japan, because military of Japan was destroyed after the May. First, it was a capitulation of the Reich, Third Reich, and after that, it was Japan. That's why to announce that United States was a main role in the victory of Second World War is not historically reasonable. That's why, of course, our national leader that historical truth is a main principle, in relationships between nations. We should not manipulate of the consciousness of the nations. We should be more truthful. That is because it's a question of trust. It's a question of like we can tell some historical transparency between leaders. That is most important, for my opinion.
Yes, in Dvoryanov, we have nearly 30 foreign leaders at this parade, mostly from BRICS, Central Asia and Africa. Stood with Putin, but no G7 leaders have attended. What does this say about Russia's true diplomatic standing, obviously, while facing sanctions and condemnation from Western nations over the conflict in Ukraine?
Yes, we can see that right now this deep conflict between East and West, and the conflict between West and global South is looks very dramatic for us, and that's why we can see that the future of our planet will be changed soon. And of course, even that kind of conflict inside the Western Alliance itself, for example, kind of conflict or misunderstanding between the United States and Europe, is again improvement that new process start. And new process, not only BRICS, Global South is very active right now. We can see on the parade the president of Brazil, we can see the president of Venezuela, we can see a lot of presidents from Africa continent and South Asia, of course, Xi Jinping, like a frontman and headliner, representative of Asia, a representative of eastern part of the world. But come again, never and ever in our history, Russian Federation start with some aggressive war. We never initiate any war in our history. That's why, of course, everybody understands, especially during USSR time, you know very well how USSR support Africa continents. That's why a lot of African presidents which came right now to see the Vladimir Putin, our national leader, they are Russian-speaking presidents. They remember with a very high-level gratefulness and warm feelings some memory about how Russia support Africa continent. We invest to the human capital in Africa continent. And right now is a time where we are receiving feedback.
Yes.
You see, this is a historical justice. This is a justice, this is a historical truth.
I just want to say that critics of that statement, Dr. Dvoryanov, would say that Russia did launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. But I'm just trying to balance your statements there. But I now want to move over to the event itself. The man, the guest of honor, leader of the country with the second largest economy in the world, President Xi Jinping, is in attendance, sat next to Vladimir Putin, where China's also at the parade. China's honor guard marched for the first time since 2015. Quite a statement. Does Moscow view Beijing as a military ally or a simple symbolic partner?
Thank you for your beautiful, very professional question. First of all, slightly about balance. Well, it was not invasion of Russian Federation to Ukraine. It was a special operation. You know this very well, that historical truth, that start from 2014, Ukraine put so much and big aggression. They killed people in the eastern part of Ukraine, in Donbass. We have a lot of human rights activists from Europe. It's not Russian human rights activists, from even French, French human activists from France. They confirm that it is completely aggressive, anti-human behavior of Ukraine. That's why Russian, it was not invasion, it was special operation. But come again to the chief guest, to the honorable guest, Xi Jinping in Paris. Of course, it's a confirmation of our strong relationships with our neighbor, with our partner, China, which is a traditional country. And why we have similarity, some kind of chemistry between our leaders is most important. Because to our leaders, it is the ancient civilizations with our own tradition, history, vision, and mission as well. That's why we completely understand that in such kind of complex problems and during the modern age, modern history, we should support each other. That is a win-win situation. And that not only question that Russia giving some resources, natural resources to China, and China can support Russia in the military field. It's first of all should be dialogue in ideology of two our countries. And of course, China is not democracy. I don't know is it really second or first economy, but we can see right now potentially is number one economy. According to the role of the China today is number one economy. Frankly speaking, we understand it. Look to the all the type of the economical activity. China is number one. Is a big challenger. That's why for our national leaders, first of all, it's most important to increase our understanding of traditional value, how to our nations be really in friendship mood, in this dialogue of civilization, to understand each other, to support each other. That is most important.
Yes, and I finally wanted to ask you about the statement from Vladimir Putin, where he praised a multipolar world and where these foreign guests all applauded. What concrete policy shifts, including trade, currency, and security, should we expect to see that to turn that rhetoric into a reality?
Thank you for this amazing question. So important question for all of us. Because see, our national leader Vladimir Putin, he is very dedicated to his mission. This question related to his historical speech 2007 in Munich is of course you know this about Munich speech of Putin when he start to manifest his vision how we can handle all these problems around us with a so aggressive appetite and mood of the Western Alliance to eat all the resources of eastern part of the world. He told it should be some equality, it should be some understanding because in front of the face of God, He's looking for us. We should be human nation, not like a barbarian, you know, very educated but barbarian in our behavior. That's why, of course, multipolar world is a model. Actually, it's a philosophical point of view. It's a spiritual point of view. It's a moral and ethic point of view. Everything that is a big contribution of our national leader for the future of the planet. That is again, he was chosen by God to act like this. He was chosen by history to improve and to correct all other Western leaders, to touch their mind, their heart, for understanding that every nation in the world have their own rights to be present in our prosperity, harmony, and peace and love.
Dr. Sergei Dvoryanov, thank you very much for joining us. That wraps up our coverage on Moscow's Victory Day Parade. We will bring you all new developments in regard to this and all the diplomatic meetings that are sure to follow. Thank you very much for joining us.